Kendrick Lamar is coming back, and this time the entire industry is about to bleed for it. I do not mean coming back with a soft rollout. I do not mean coming back with a polite little single, and I do not mean coming back with a photo shoot and a caption tossed onto Instagram at 3 in the morning. Kendrick Lamar is walking back into this rap game with tape on his knuckles, a corner crew loaded up like a war room, a mouthpiece already fitted, and a hit list nobody wanted their name printed on. The signal is out. The paperwork is bleeding through the cracks. The insiders are whispering the same story into different microphones, and what they are describing is not a comeback. It is a public execution scheduled on a calendar you can already circle in red ink. A boxing-themed Kendrick Lamar album is loaded in the chamber. The release corridor has been narrowed to a razor line of weeks. The collaborators have been pinned to a launch schedule, and every single rapper who spent the last 18 months talking sideways while the man was locked in a training camp is about to find out what happens when the boogeyman steps back onto the block with his hands taped and his eyes on the door. Sit with that for a second, family, because what I am about to lay out on this table is the sharpest, most source-corroborated, most calendar-locked forensic breakdown of the next Kendrick Lamar rollout that exists anywhere on this platform. And I want you strapped in for every single frame, every single leak, every single receipt from the corner of the ring to the center of the canvas. This is not clickbait. This is the map. This is the tape. This is the file. Before we go any deeper into this room, tap that like button, hit subscribe, and slap that notification bell like it owes you rent money 3 months overdue. Because when the next leak breaks, and it is breaking soon, believe that on my life, I am going to be the first voice on your screen breaking it down. That is a standing appointment. That is a commitment I keep every single time. That is a promise etched into the record and stamped with a date. Let me set the room properly for you before we walk through the corridor. For the last stretch of this genre, hip-hop has not been about music. Let me repeat that so the folks in the back can hear me clean and clear. Hip-hop has not been about music. It has been about streaming charts, contract paperwork, podcast beef, first-week sales projections, and grown men arguing over billboard placement like day traders on the floor of the exchange screaming at ticker symbols while the building burns down around them. The ceiling of this genre has never felt this close to the floor, and the floor has never felt this close to the basement. The loudest voices in the room have shipped projects that sound less like albums and more like sonic cardboard, filler stacked on filler, hyped as events, forgotten within a week, buried under the next algorithmic wave that rolled through the timeline before the release week even finished. Future released a project that was supposed to remind us why he wears the torch. It did the opposite. The Drake trilogy that was supposed to end the debate ended nothing at all because nobody is still spinning any of it. The clubs are not playing it. The streets are not quoting it. The DJs are not rewinding it. The barbershops are not arguing about it. The group chats are not screenshotting bars from it. It arrived, it evaporated, and it left the room quieter than it found it. And that is the polite version of what actually happened. Meanwhile, the commentator class, the podcaster class, the reaction farm class, the gotcha hunter class, turned rap discourse into a middle school cafeteria fight, and through every single second of that noise, one man stayed silent. One man kept the gloves off, the mouth shut, and the fists loaded behind his back like a boxer waiting for the bell. Kendrick Lamar. That silence is about to detonate, and the first leak on the table comes from an account that has been almost surgically accurate this entire year, with almost no misses on the ledger. If you have been paying attention to which insider called Amari's debut before it landed, which insider called the timing of half a dozen label rollouts, which insider has been running receipts with almost no misses across the whole calendar year, then you already know the account I am talking about without me having to spell it out for you letter by letter. This is not a burner page recycling recycled rumors. This is not a spaghetti-on-the-wall speculation blog. This is a documented track record you can pull up in your own browser and verify inside of 30 seconds if you are the type that needs to see it with your own 2 eyes before you believe anything anybody says on a YouTube video. And what that insider posted last week was a 2-line grenade with the pin already pulled and the fuse already lit. Kendrick Lamar is dropping soon. The album is boxing-themed. That was it. No hedge language. No maybe. No sources say. No soft footing. No polite disclaimer at the bottom of the post. 2 sentences that basically confirmed what a slice of the fan base has been whispering for months in group chats and comment sections all over the internet. Because let us not pretend the signals were not already painted on the wall in daylight. Kendrick Lamar showed up to the Grammy carpet with his hand wrapped like he had just walked out of a sparring session and left the tape on for the cameras to catch every angle. The man has been photographed at the gym, on the bag, in the mitts, tape on the knuckles, trainer whispering in his ear at the edge of the ring like a corner man during a title fight. Visual after visual has been dropping across every social channel featuring the ropes, the corner, the walkout energy, the entire cinematic language of the sweet science. Dave Free has been signaling with the imagery. DJ Dahi has been signaling in the studio posts. J-Rock and Schoolboy Q, the whole extended PG Lang and TD adjacent family, have been dropping breadcrumbs into the timeline for a solid 12 months straight. And half of them are laughing about it in the comments while we all keep missing the point on repeat. The boxing frame is not a leak. The boxing frame is a mural painted in daylight, and half the culture has been walking past it without ever bothering to look up at the wall for even a second. That is not an accident. That is the signature move. He tells you exactly what is coming on the record, in plain sight, and then he watches the world miss it every single time without fail. Here is where the wire tightens and the picture sharpens up. A second insider, a completely separate account, a completely separate resume of receipts, when you can also verify with your own eyes inside a browser tab in about 30 seconds, corroborated the same story from a different angle entirely. Back at the tail end of May, that second source posted that before the next Kendrick Lamar album lands, we should expect a pre-album feature, a guest verse, a warm-up appearance, something to crack the seal on the vault and reintroduce the voice to the culture on somebody else's record first. At the time of that leak, nobody knew where that feature was going to surface. YG had a project in the pipeline. There were murmurs about a Megan Thee Stallion collaboration. Doja Cat was rumored on the shortlist. Tyler the Creator's cycle was churning. Baby Keem's name was floating around. The guessing game was wide open, and everybody had a theory they were shopping around on Twitter and in the group chats. And then, right on cue, the answer walked through the door with a name tag on and a schedule in its hand. DJ Dahi's debut album titled Black Boy Alternative drops on August 28th. Track 3, How to Pray, featuring Amber Mark, featuring Kendrick Lamar. The snippet is already leaking across every corner of the internet. The snippet is already lapping the timeline 3 times over on repeat play. And it sounds like a fighter walking back into the ring with the gloves already laced, the mouthpiece already in, and the corner man giving final instructions before the bell rings for round 1. That is not a coincidence, family. That is a rollout. And that is exactly where every single domino starts to tip in sequence, one after the next, right down the line without stopping. Let me pull this apart properly because this is the part where a lot of channels stop and just guess wildly without any framework. I am not going to do that to you, and I am not going to insult your intelligence by pretending speculation is analysis. I am going to walk you through the real logic of how an album cycle of this magnitude actually has to move behind the scenes, and I am going to narrow the drop window down to something you can screenshot, mark on your calendar, and hold me to when it lands. The industry does not shut down in August. The industry does not really shut its doors until the middle of December, when Christmas music takes over every playlist on every platform and legacy campaigns eat the rest of the calendar. So when we plug in the August 28th feature drop as our anchor point on the timeline, we can trace forward with real precision using the standard industry math. A pre-album feature is almost never released more than 4 months before the album itself. 2 months is the common industry window most artists use. 1 month is the aggressive rollout window used when the artist wants maximum immediacy and impact, which means the Kendrick Lamar album is not landing in December no matter what any tabloid tries to tell you. That is the first tile that falls off the board and hits the floor. December belongs to Christmas releases, holiday charts, and legacy campaigns designed to squeeze end-of-year royalties out of the calendar before the ball drops on New Year's. Kendrick Lamar does not chase Mariah on the tally, and he is not walking into a launch corridor stacked with a Marvel Doomsday cycle, a GTA 6 release window, and the wall of holiday competition all crashing into each other at once in the same 3 weeks. December is off the board, dead and buried before we even get to the analysis phase. That leaves September, October, and November on the table for us to examine. 3 months, about 90 days of possibility to swing through. Which of those windows is he actually going to swing through, and why? Let us break it down one by one, because each of those months has a story, and each of those stories has evidence sitting on the table you can hold in your own hands and turn over. September has a case, a serious case that deserves respect. There is a documented pattern of surfacing in September that stretches back multiple years across the catalog. The Black Air Force's record dropped mid-September. The Party at the Party declaration ran through that window. That month has been used as a signaling window multiple times in the last several cycles, and the fans who track this stuff have receipts stacked up in their Notes app. But September has a problem, and that problem has a name: Sean Corey Carter. Jay-Z is almost certainly going to be announced as the 2027 Super Bowl halftime show headliner, and by every credible signal on the board, that announcement is set to land during the September window with a full press campaign behind it. On top of that, Pharrell essentially spoiled an upcoming Jay-Z album on the Yankee Stadium stage during that three-night residency. The residency that fried the internet for a week straight. The residency that had every rap head in the country pricing flights to see it live in the flesh. The residency that reminded the whole culture what a real hip-hop event actually looks like when the greats decide to show up in the flesh and hold the stage. And if Jay-Z is spinning a new album cycle out of that runway, Kendrick Lamar is not going to trample the announcement or the momentum. These two are not just peers on a chart somewhere. They are aligned in a way that carries weight and history. They have a documented, mutually reinforcing partnership going back years across records, stages, and boardrooms in 3 different cities. Jay-Z has embedded him in halftime shows dating back to the Dr. Dre production. Kendrick Lamar and Beyoncé have collaborated across records and stages more than once, and the receipts are on the record. There is no version of reality where Kendrick Lamar drops on top of a Jay-Z Super Bowl announcement. That would be professional sabotage of a man he genuinely respects, a man he has built alongside, a man whose blessing carries real weight in his corner and always has since day one. So September is not the drop. September is the runway. September is the Jay-Z window. September is when the How to Pray feature marinates in the culture, when the hate watchers spiral into paragraph-long comment sections, when the fans stack the anticipation like poker chips, and when the boxing narrative saturates every timeline from X to Instagram to the deepest group chat in the country coast to coast. Sit with that. Let it land in your chest. That leaves October and November. The final two. The real fight on the card. October is spooky. October is the month Kendrick Lamar himself referenced on GNX in the middle of a verse most people flew right past on first listen. It gets spooky every day in October. At the time it came out, plenty of listeners heard that line as a mood bar, a texture, a throwaway punch that flew by in a beat drop. Run the tape back. Really listen this time with headphones on. The man embeds his own future into his own lyrics on the record like a message in a bottle. That is not a fan theory pulled from a Reddit thread at 2 a.m. That is a documented pattern with receipts stretching across his entire catalog going back multiple projects and multiple album cycles. He telegraphed Squabble Up as a precursor to Paper Cut months before Amari's debut existed in this dimension of reality. He plants seeds and lets the culture walk right past them at full speed, and only after the fruit finally shows up on the branch do we realize we were standing in the garden the whole time with our eyes closed. He has done this exact move on record after record after record, cycle after cycle after cycle, decade after decade at this point. So when Kendrick Lamar says spooky every day in October, and the very next album in the launch tube is a boxing-themed statement built to detach heads from shoulders, do you understand what a Halloween corridor drop from him would do to the current landscape of this genre in a single weekend? It would end careers on impact. It would clear the board in a single weekend without needing a second single. It would arrive with the walkout music of a heavyweight championship, and every rival on the roster would already be flat on the canvas before the referee finished counting to 2 out loud. October is not just a month on the calendar. October is a threat with a date on it and a witness list attached. November is the shadow candidate. November is the strategic play with the paperwork behind it. GNX dropped at the tail end of November, right around the Thanksgiving stretch when the industry was already looking past the year and mentally checking out for the holidays. That was the last playbook, the surprise move playbook, and it worked at a scale nobody in this genre has matched in years and years since. And there is a very real world where he simply runs the same maneuver back with an even bigger swing this time around. 2-year anniversary. Bigger statement. Deeper impact. Same element of surprise on the same weekend. A November drop would ride the award season swell, dominate every year-end list from Pitchfork to Complex to Rolling Stone, and set the launchpad for a Grammy sweep the following spring across every major category on the ballot. That is a business move. That is a chess move. That is a man who understands calendars, cycles, and the exact geometry of a legacy carved into stone. Kendrick Lamar is not just an artist behind a microphone. Kendrick Lamar is a strategist with a microphone in his hand and a chessboard on the desk with all the pieces already in position. So which is it going to be? Given how this industry actually operates behind closed doors, given the exact placement of the Dahi feature on August 28th, given the September lane belonging to Jay-Z, and given the way Kendrick Lamar has historically communicated with his audience across the last decade of his career, my honest read is that the album lands in October or November, with October carrying the stronger narrative case and November carrying the stronger commercial case. Either way, mark your calendars. Either way, clear your schedule. Either way, tell your girlfriend you are busy that weekend. Because when this album drops, it is going to swallow the news cycle whole, and there will be no other topic in hip-hop for weeks on end, no matter how loud anybody else tries to be in that same window with their own release. Let me sit with the boxing concept for a minute, because a lot of people are treating it like an aesthetic choice, a visual gimmick, a photo shoot theme with a fun caption underneath. It is not even close to it. Boxing is not a costume for Kendrick Lamar to wear for a press cycle. Boxing is a language. Boxing is a metaphor. Boxing is a philosophical stance. Boxing is a way of saying, I am not shadow boxing anymore. I am here to hit somebody in the face and make the crowd flinch. He has spent the last stretch of his career styling himself as the last real fighter left in a genre stacked with shadow boxers throwing air punches at each other on podcasts every Wednesday. And now he is walking that metaphor directly into the album jacket, into the visuals, into the sound design, into the marketing rollout, into every single micro decision that surrounds this project, from the color palette to the font choices to the frame rate of the trailer. When you build an entire album around the imagery of the ring, the tape, the corner, the mouthpiece, the walkout music, the referee, the 10 count, the raised glove, the sweat on the canvas, the towel in the corner, the announcer at the ropes with the microphone in hand, you are not just making an album. You are staging a title fight in front of the world. And you are telling the entire genre that they are on the fight card whether they signed a contract or not before the tickets went on sale. Let that land properly. Which brings us straight to the names on the card that is being printed. Because a Kendrick Lamar boxing album does not live in a vacuum on a shelf somewhere in an archive. It lives in a landscape where a very specific list of names spent the last 18 months talking sideways, while Kendrick Lamar was silent in his corner training in the dark. Drake is on that list, and Drake is at the top of that list whether we say it out loud in polite company or not. Every commentator who bought into the Kendrick Lamar is finished narrative is on that list. Every academic-style analyst who tried to turn "not like us" into a paperwork discussion is on that list with a highlighter, a slide deck, and a legal pad full of receipts. Every insider who treated GNX like a one-off fluke instead of a warning shot fired across the bow is on that list too. Every podcaster who filled their entire feed with anti-Kendrick content while the man was training in silence, believe it or not, they are on that list too, right at the bottom next to their download counts and their sponsor lists. He does not need to name every single one of them individually. He just needs to step through the ropes with the mouthpiece in and the gloves laced tight. The names will name themselves the second the music starts playing. The bars will do the walking to their doorsteps. The verses will do the punching straight through the drywall of their living rooms. And by the time the album cycle is over and the dust settles across the timeline, half the loudest voices of the last 2 years are going to be quietly deleting posts and pretending they never said what they said out loud on camera to hundreds of thousands of viewers at 1080p with the receipts still cached in Google. Do not get it twisted about what this rollout is going to do to the current state of hip-hop discourse across every platform. The moment Kendrick Lamar drops that first single, every gotcha podcast bid, every paperwork argument, every stream count debate, every "who is really the biggest" comment section thread, every algorithm-farmed reaction video, all of it goes silent overnight. It always does. Every time the man walks outside, the block clears. Every time he posts, the noise disappears from the timeline. Every time he drops so much as a snippet, the entire ecosystem of hate watchers and rage baiters loses its funding overnight, because nobody is clicking on their nonsense when there is actual art in the room to talk about instead. The commentator class has been running an economy of distraction for 2 solid years now, feeding off the vacuum. Kendrick Lamar is about to collapse that economy in a single week, and there is nothing they can do to stop it. Watch the numbers. Watch the podcast download counts crater the week the single hits. Watch the reaction video views nosedive the day the album lands on the streaming platforms. Watch the whole Parasite class scramble for a brand new host to feed on because the old one just left the building and locked the door behind him. Read the room. Read it twice. Take notes with a pen. I already know some of you are typing paragraphs at me right now in the comments section while this video is still playing. I already know some of you have been academically trained by a certain crowd to argue about anything except the music itself when the music actually shows up. That is your prerogative, and I respect it as a right. But I promise you, when this album lands on the streaming platforms at midnight, you will not be able to hold the line no matter how hard you try to keep the framing alive. The songs will move the culture will move the conversation, and the conversation will move right past you like you were never even in the room to begin with. That is how this always ends. That is how it ended in 2024. That is how it ended when GNX dropped and reset the entire genre in a single weekend without warning or press release. That is how it is going to end again this time. On a bigger scale, with a bigger blast radius, Because the boxing frame is not a defensive posture. It is an offensive one with a bad temper and a chip on its shoulder. Let me zoom back out and give you the full timetable one more time, so you can screenshot this exact page and hold me to every single line I am putting down here on the record. August 28th, the Kendrick Lamar feature surfaces on DJ Dahi's Black Boy Alternative, Track 3, How to Pray, with Amber Mark on the bridge singing over the beat. That is the seal cracking. That is the vault breathing for the first time in months. That is the first bell of the fight ringing across the entire genre. September, the runway month. The Jay-Z Super Bowl announcement is expected to land during that window with a full press blitz. The Jay-Z album cycle continues to build steam behind the scenes on Roc Nation's side. Kendrick Lamar stays off stage entirely while the feature marinates and the culture starts assembling the puzzle in real time on their own timelines with their own theories. Late September into mid-October, the pre-rollout corridor opens up across every platform simultaneously. Expect the visuals to surface across Instagram, X, and YouTube in the same 48-hour window. Expect a single with impact big enough to trend for a week straight. Expect a title reveal that breaks the internet down the middle within 20 minutes of dropping. Expect a boxing-themed teaser that will absolutely fracture the timeline in half by the end of the news cycle. October through November, the album itself lands with the full walkout. Boxing-themed statement piece. The most anticipated release Kendrick Lamar has ever staged in his entire career, arriving with the entire industry watching because they simply have no choice in the matter at that point. And then December through the first quarter of the next year, the aftermath rolls out in phases across every medium. The tour rumblings start building. The awards conversation takes over the ceremony. The halftime tie-ins get announced with fanfare. The ripple effects that will rewrite what greatness means in this genre for the next decade of the culture settle into the record. Every phase mapped. Every phase preloaded. Every phase already in motion behind the curtain that nobody has pulled back yet. Because a Kendrick Lamar boxing album does not just live on its release day and then disappear into the archive with everything else. It reshapes every single conversation that follows it for months on end. It resets the criteria for what a great rap album is supposed to be in this era of streaming and TikTok clips. It reestablishes the standard that the last 2 years of this genre have been running away from as fast as their little legs could carry them across the parking lot. It forces every peer, every rival, every commentator, every podcast host to raise their game or step off the field entirely. And listen to me when I say this. I have been saying it since GNX dropped, and I will say it again louder for the folks in the back. Kendrick Lamar could release his weakest album on record, and it would still eat the entire industry alive for breakfast, lunch, and a late-night snack. That is where we are as a genre right now. That is the gravitational pull one artist has right now in this game. And Kendrick Lamar is not about to release his weakest album. He is about to release what I genuinely believe will be the most focused, most surgical, most narratively ferocious project of his entire catalog to date, hands down. Because a man does not train for a fight this quietly for this long unless he is planning to end somebody's career on impact and walk away with the belt on his shoulder. Here is my final read on this whole thing, and I want you to sit with it before you scroll away from this page and click something else. The current state of hip-hop is not the crisis a lot of commentators are calling it on their podcasts every Wednesday afternoon. It is the calm before the storm. The reason the discourse feels petty and hollow is because the real practitioners have been off the field for 18 months and counting. The reason the numbers game has been the only conversation left standing is because there has not been any music worth actually talking about in the same window of time. That silence is about to be broken, and the man breaking it has already told us in daylight exactly how he plans to do it. Tape on his hands, gloves on his fists, mouthpiece in his corner. Kendrick Lamar is not returning to make peace with this industry or the people running it. He is returning to reorganize it from the top down without asking permission from anybody. He is returning to hand out receipts to everybody who forgot who was standing in the room while he was gone. Kendrick Lamar is returning to remind every single artist in this genre that when the standard bearer decides to swing his fists, the standard itself moves with the punch, and everybody else has to catch up or step aside off the sidewalk. And if Kendrick Lamar and Jay-Z end up active in the same window, which is looking more likely by the week, more likely by the leak, more likely by every credible signal on the board, hip-hop is about to walk into a golden age on a short runway with no warning label attached. Both men aligned. Both men firing. Both men reminding the culture what greatness actually sounds like when the greats decide to show up at the same time and in the same room together. That is not a rap cycle, family. That is a renaissance in real time. That is a moment historians will circle back to a decade from now and say, That is exactly where the genre came back to life after being on the ropes for 2 solid years. And if you are watching this breakdown right now, on this channel, at this exact moment in the timeline, you are watching that renaissance kick off in real time from the front row of the arena. You are going to be able to say you saw it coming before the first bell ever rang in the arena, before the first punch ever landed on the record, before the world caught up to what was already in motion behind the curtain the whole time. Let me stress this one more time before we close this out for the night, because I want it locked into the record and highlighted for the archive in bright yellow. The boxing frame is not just about combat and knockout punches. It is about discipline. It is about training in the dark when nobody is watching and nobody is filming. It is about the loneliness of a fighter's camp when the phone stays off and the world moves on without you for months at a stretch. It is about the willingness to take a shot to the face, absorb the punch, and swing back with more force than you were hit with in the first place. Kendrick Lamar has been in camp for a long time now, longer than most of us realize when we look back at the calendar and count the months. And when a fighter of this caliber emerges from camp with the tape still on his hands, he does not emerge to spar with anybody in the gym for practice rounds. He emerges to knock somebody unconscious in the middle of the ring in front of the whole world watching on pay-per-view. So when this album finally arrives on your screen at midnight, do not expect Kendrick Lamar to be gentle with this genre. Do not expect diplomacy from him at any point. Do not expect olive branches or apologies or bridge building of any kind. Expect the 10 count. Expect the referee waving it off with both hands raised in the air. Expect the corner man throwing the towel in on behalf of the entire commentator class before the second round can even start on the clock. This is not a comeback rollout, family. This is a coronation, carried out with clenched fists and a mouthguard still in place. Now here is the part 1, need you to lean in for like the mic is right in your face and the camera is running. Tell me what you see in the comments section below this video before you close the tab. Which month is Kendrick Lamar hitting? October or November? Which rappers are getting knocked cold on this album when it drops? And who deserves the first shot to the jaw when the bell rings on round 1? Do you think Jay-Z and Kendrick Lamar are actually coordinating this rollout behind the scenes with matching PR calendars? Or is the timing just cosmic alignment between two greats moving in the same direction at the same time by accident? Are you rocking with the boxing concept from top to bottom? Or are you worried it might end up feeling forced by the second single drop? Speak on it. Loud. Right now. I want the take that gets you clowned in your group chat by your closest friends. I want the take you would only say behind a burner account with a picture of a random cat on the profile. Post it under this video, and I will be reading every single one of them tonight until my eyes give out and the screen goes blurry. And if you rolled with me all the way to this frame right here at the end of the breakdown, please tap that like, hit subscribe, and slap that notification bell one more time for good measure. Because when the next leak surfaces, and it is surfacing soon, believe that on everything I own, I am going to be the first voice on this platform breaking it down for you frame by frame, corner by corner, punch by punch, source by source. That is a commitment. That is a standing appointment. That is a promise I keep every single time without exception across every leak on the docket. That is the deal we have on this channel, and it is not changing anytime soon. Before you click off this page and lose the tab in your browser history, do yourself one more favor and do it right now while it is still fresh in your head. There is a piece of context you cannot walk into this fall blind about no matter what anybody else on this platform tries to tell you in a competing video. Jay-Z just rewrote hip-hop history in a single night with what may be the greatest concert performance of this entire decade at Yankee Stadium, and it directly connects to how this Kendrick Lamar rollout is going to unfold in real time over the next several months of the calendar. That breakdown is sitting on your end screen right now waiting for you to click it. Slide into it next before you do anything else with your afternoon. Do not walk into this album cycle blind and unprepared for what is coming. Walk in ready with both eyes open and both fists loaded. The bell is about to ring. Kendrick Lamar is already stepping through the ropes and adjusting his gloves for round 1. And if you blink for even a second, family, you are going to miss the exact moment the entire genre changed forever in front of your eyes on your own screen. One more thing before you slide off, because this is the piece that ties every single thread we walked through together into one clean bow at the end of the night. The reason this rollout matters more than any other rollout of the current era is because the whole business model of the last 2 years has been built on the assumption that the standard bearer would stay silent forever and let the vacuum keep monetizing itself in perpetuity. The podcasters built entire quarterly budgets on that assumption. The reaction farms built entire content calendars on that assumption. The blogs built entire staff rosters on that assumption. The paperwork analysts built entire brands on that assumption. Every single one of them looked at the comm and mistook it for the ending. Every single one of them saw a fighter resting in the corner and assumed the fight was over. Every single one of them is about to find out the hard way that the fighter was not resting. The fighter was studying tape. The fighter was watching every single one of them work. The fighter was writing names down in a notebook nobody in that ecosystem has ever seen the pages of. And when the album finally lands on the streaming platforms in the corridor we mapped out tonight, those names are coming off the page and onto the record in ways that are going to be impossible to walk back once the audio is out in the world. So screenshot the timetable. Screenshot the framework. Screenshot